Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Saturday, September 27th, 2025. And for all of us AFL lovers, it is like Christmas Day for us because it is grand final day. The Geelong Cats against the Brisbane Lions. And a bit like Christmas Day, up very, very early this morning, about 6:30. It's about 7:30 at the moment, the time I got organised and got myself together and out on the road, which is good. It's a beautiful day, absolutely beautiful day. Last week's been pretty ordinary, but today the sun's out. I won't say it's warm, but it's not cold. So really, really good, and looking forward to, as I said, a big, big day. And I've got to be up early because I've got to go to the pub today. Big day at the pub. So should be exciting. Hopefully we get a few people in there to watch the big game. All right, to the boxing on this day. Let's have a look. I haven't really had a look at this today. Where are we? 1970. Yoshiaka Numata defended his WBC 130-pound title knockout of Rahul Rojas in the 5th round. What's going on back there? Bit of noise. 1980. Geez, I don't remember this one because I was only about 6 or 7 years old, but I remember obviously watching it back, and that was the day marvellous Marvin Hagler. Come here, buddy. Let's go this way. Let's get out of there. Marvellous Marvin Hagler won the world middleweight title with a 3rd round stoppage of Britain's Alan Mintor. This way, bud. No. Jeez. I don't really like going up this street because there's cars out in the street, there's caravans, there's lots of stuff you can get into. But if you remember, he'd drawn before this fight with Vito Antuofermo, 15-round draw in a fight that most people thought that he won. So got his opportunity to go to England. Of course, he took it and demolished Alan Mintor in the 3rd round. Unfortunately, didn't get a real opportunity to celebrate the win because in true English fashion, well, back then anyway, not so much these days, they showered him with bottles and cans and whatever they could find in the arena, and he had to be covered up by his team and security and ushered back to the change room. So unfortunately not an opportunity for Marvin Hagler to relish in his win. But he went on to become one of the greatest middleweight champions of all time, and some of those fights with Leonard Hearns Duran and guys like Juan Roldan and John Mugabe and all the best middleweights of the era. I remember he actually sort of got a little bit of revenge on the English fraternity, I suppose, when he demolished Tony Simpson in 6 rounds. That was in 1983, I think it was. Mustafa Hamsho, another very, very good opponent, beat him twice. So one of the greats was marvellous Marvin Hagler. Another British fighter, this time on the right end of the result, was Lloyd Honeyghan in one of the biggest upsets of that time in 1986. He stopped Donald Curry in the 6th round for the world welterweight title. Now, that was, at the time, as I said, a massive, massive upset. Donald Curry was the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. I think he was coming off the 2nd round knockout of Milton McCrory to unify the world welterweight title. And if you're not familiar, back at that time, Curry and McCrory was pretty much the Crawford Spence of its time. McCrory had the WBC belt. Curry had the WBA and IBF belt. Obviously no WBO belt around at that time. And Donald Curry absolutely obliterated McCrory to knock him out in 2 rounds. And this was his, I suppose I won't call it his coming out party, but this was when he was supposed to shine. Taking on little known Lloyd Honeyghan, the Ragamuffin Man, another one of my favourites back in the day. Still love the way he fought. Limited, but just got in there and gave it his all, had charisma, a little bit like my man Vinny Pazienza. Although I think Vinny Pazienza was a little bit better fighter. But he got a really bad cut on his eye. A lot of people thought it was a headbutt, so I reckon it should have been maybe gone to fight should have been stopped and gone either to a technical draw or had gone past the fourth to a decision. I think that the odds are that Huntington would have won anyway. He was pretty much dominating Curry, who seemed really obscured by that cut and couldn't really get back on track. But either way, the referee deemed it a cut, and a punch that caused the cut, and he couldn't continue after the 6th round, and Lloyd Huntington was proclaimed the winner. And it went on to have some good fights with Marlon Starling, Mark Breland. Who else? He fought a few anyway, Lloyd Huntington. Obviously, Vinny Pazio, he fought him as well. So, well, yeah, as I said, one of my favourites was the Ragamuffin Man. He had a few nicknames, actually, but that was my favourite of Lloyd Huntington. Then what else have we got there? 2008, Andre Berto defended his welterweight title against Steve Forbes in California. And that's probably about it on this day. All right, on to today's news. And look, there's probably not a hell of a lot of actual news getting around, but I have seen more talk in the last couple of days about Terrence Crawford's legacy. I know I spoke about Canelo's yesterday and where he stands. I don't think his legacy will be affected at all as far as being an all-time great Canelo. And I think a few people commented as well, they'd seen the same decline in Canelo in his last few fights. And nothing wrong with that. It happens to the best. And as Ronnie Shields said, when it's over, it's over. And you get the impression that unless Canelo's matched up very carefully, he's going to struggle to get back. And he's had a lot of wars at 35, or 34, whatever it is. But the question comes to Terrence Crawford. Where does he rank in the all-time greats now? Now, if you ask him, he's now on they call it the boxing Mount Rushmore. And it's now getting referenced. It used to always be, pound for pound and all-time greats and this and that. And now it's about who's on the Mount Rushmore of boxing. And it's a good question. It's a good question. Now, you have to obviously take into account the win over Canelo, but you've also got to look at the timing and, well, the way he did it was, you couldn't do it any better than what he did against Canelo. He absolutely dominated Alvarez. But where does it rank in comparison to some of the greats? Now, I think I was asked about this a while back, and I might have commented on one of my videos about the Mount Rushmore boxing, and it's extremely hard to do. There's 4 fighters. I suppose you could stretch it out if you wanted to and just maybe chisel out another name or head up there on Mount Rushmore. But I think it depends on how you look at boxing. Is it just simply the best fighter of all time? Is that the biggest personalities of all time? Is it the boxer that's done the most for the sport over their career? I mean, there's so many different things. I think if you tied all that together and put it in a box and draw it out, I think you'd come up with, I think you'd have to have Muhammad Ali on Mount Rushmore. I think you'd have to have Sugar Ray Robinson up there as well. This is where it probably gets complicated, because after that, there's so many different opinions out there. So Ali and Robinson for me. I would probably have Sugar Ray Leonard up there. I know that's going to cause a bit of friction with some people. I don't know. I think I did this the last time I was asked about this, by the way. I couldn't come up with the names. Look, I think, geez, heaven forbid I said someone like Mike Tyson. But I think you would have to go with, would you go with Mayweather, Pacquiao, De La Hoya? I'm not sure. But see, they're the polarising names. Anyway, so all that aside, Terrence Crawford has said, he's all over the place today, this dog. Terrence Crawford has said after his win over Canelo, he deserves to be on Mount Rushmore. I think David Benavides actually backed him up and said he agrees. I 100% don't agree. Massive fan of Terrence Crawford. What he did was unbelievable, but let's face it. You talk about resumes. It depends on what you go by. Is it resume or simply boxing ability? I think even in boxing ability, he's definitely right in the probably top 15, I suppose. But on Mount Rushmore, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I just don't see how you could have him past some of those greats. And look, break down his career, he had some good wins, the Porters and who else has he beaten? Mir Khan, all these types of guys. The Terrence Crawford, Errol, geez, forgive me, it's early this morning. A mental blank about his resume. You know what I'm getting at. He's had a lot of good wins. But his 2 signature wins Errol Spence and Terrence, I keep saying Terrence Crawford, sorry, again, it is early. Errol Spence and Canelo Alvarez. Now, you break them down. If they're his two signature wins, his legacy wins, if you will, I mean, Errol Spence, look, I know at the time it was regarded as a 50-50 fight. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I mean, Errol Spence was a real wash version. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Terrence Crawford beats Errol Spence, whether he's in the condition he was when he beat him or 3 years early. Come on, hang on. I've got to get past here. Jesus, Neil, you are just killing me today, brother. I think he beats him no matter what stage of his career he's at. I think does Terrence Crawford. I think style-wise, I think he's never going to be able to beat Crawford, or would never have been able to beat him. Crawford too fast, too slick, punches too pinpoint. Just had everything over Errol Spence, and I think it was one of those cases of, you know, you look good against certain opposition and not so good against others. And a lot of fighters have come up short against Crawford. Obviously, 42 of them, but you take that win into consideration, and Spence had been through the car crash and been inactive, and the really bad weight issues he'd had making the weight for the fight. Not taking anything away from Terrence, but I don't see that as a Duran beating Leonard in Montreal, Canada, or Hagler knocking out Hearns or someone like that. I don't see it in that regard. And then the Canelo win, well, that's probably the one that's obviously going to get him a lot of brownie points. But again, not many people picked him to beat Canelo. In hindsight, it seems like 75% of people picked him. Everyone's coming out saying, see, I told you so, whereas beforehand, there wasn't a lot of love for Terrence. But all that aside, I think the fact that, yes, he went up 2 weight divisions, it was fantastic. But geez, looking at that version of Canelo that was in there, I think the cracks had been papered over because of the level of opposition he was fighting. He was made to look good, a certain type of fighter. You see, he wasn't really in there with the slick guys. Not that there's many around like Crawford, but he did have problems with the movement of School, but got out of that fight because School refused to throw a punch. The likes of Munguia and Ryder and these types of guys were obviously pretty much custom made for him to look good. And that doesn't take away from the legacy of Canelo, by the way. You can only beat all the fighters they put in front of you. But I think the version of Canelo that Terrence beat was obviously not at his peak, and was probably on the downside of his career. So even though it was a great win, definitely one of the greatest fighters of all time, I think that's undisputed now. But as far as being in that really top echelon of, the top 10, I just can't see it. I can't see it. Talent-wise, look, I'm sure he matches up with a lot of the great fighters out there. But, and I think I said the other day, as far as a video with Floyd Mayweather, I still think Floyd Mayweather is way above Terrence Crawford. I would still have the likes of Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm talking about a similar type of fighter, by the way. And I still have, Floyd Mayweather above him and many others. But look, this is a problem when you talk about pound for pounds and things like Mount Rushmores and all this sort of stuff. I mean, people sort of get a bit bent out of shape and offended that you might be sliding their favourite fighters. There's nothing to do with that. But I mean, you've got to, unfortunately, if you don't include someone in a list or whatever, or something like this Mount Rushmore thing, of course you're going to offend people who think otherwise. But I just like to, I suppose, cherish the fighters for what they are. And so many great fighters over the years. And it's really hard when you come to these pound for pound lists because, again, everyone's got different criteria and different opinions and all that sort of stuff. But as far as being on Mount Rushmore, I don't think Terrence is anywhere near it, unfortunately. And you see how hard it was for me just to pick 4, the big 4 of all time. As I said, I would definitely have Ali, Robinson, and who else did I have on there? I can't even remember who I had on there now. But you can see how hard it is. I think the definite 2 are Ali and Robinson, and the other 2 could be up to about 20 fighters, fair income. So anyway, give me your thoughts on that. Another list that's actually just come out, speaking of lists, is the British all-time greatest fighters list. Now, that's sure to upset a few over there because there's the English tend to really get probably a little bit like the Mexican fight fans. They get really behind the specific fighters and they're popular, but might not be the actual best fighters around. And with the English fight fans, of course, the Ricky Hattons and Henry Coopers and Barry McGuigans and all these type of guys, are so revered and loved. Might not have been extremely talented, but people loved them for different reasons, and I can see why. But Joe Calzaghe has actually been named the greatest British boxer of all time, which I must admit really surprised me. I think it was a fan vote, I'm not sure. Been lots of lists thrown around. I went to the internet and had a bit of a look at some of the lists out there, and they vary so much. Looks like you've got reporters or experts or whatever the hell you might want to call them, that sort of know their boxing and have gone right back to the turn of the century, of the 19th century I'm talking about. And then there's others that are probably, you can see, that are from the sort of 70s and 80s onwards. So they're pretty much leaning that way. But Joe Calzaghe, as I said, I was surprised. I would have thought, and I'm not giving my top 10 because I simply don't know enough about all the British boxers of all time. But the consensus was, for me, or judging by the feedback from a lot of fans, was that maybe the likes of Lennox Lewis was up there. I mean, I've got a few here. Let's have a bit of a look. So, I mean, I've got another top 10 list here. This was another list I saw a while ago, or that's come up, and I sort of agree with this one. As far as modern day goes, they've got Anthony Joshua at 10, Nigel Bennett 9, Duke McKenzie at 8, Prince Nassim at 7, Chris Eubank at 6, this is senior, Ricky Hatton at 5, David Hay at 4, Tyson Fury at 3, Lennox Lewis at 2, and Joe Calzaghe at 1. But lots of great fighters in there that haven't maybe really sort of made it. I mean, as I said, you've got Barry McGuigan. I'm just going to see if I can bring up. Yeah, so you've got, I'm just going to get this little bastard off the road. Come here, buddy. Come here. Stop. Good boy. Good boy. We've got to cross over here, buddy. He's on the march this morning. Must be the nice weather has put the step. G'day, how you doing? Put an extra spring in his step. Come here, man. We've got to cross over. As I get my list back up here. Hang on, sorry, I've just lost it there. Where are we? All right, so you got the likes of those fighters I mentioned, but also guys like Ken Buchanan, Carl Froch, I'm sure won't be overly impressed with that. Bob Fitzsimmons is another one. Lloyd Honeyghan, as I said. Frank Bruno is probably more popular rather than the best fighter out there, I would say Frank Bruno. John Conti's another. Randy Turpin was a popular one. I don't know why Mia Khan's even in the conversation. Who else we got there? Duke McKenzie, I said. George Groves, Woodley Harrison. Okay. So they're probably the main ones. There was another. Who do I see there? He's not coming up. He was actually the founder of the original rules of boxing. So they look probably like Australia. They've had so many great boxers over the years, but yeah, not so sure. Look, Joe Calzaghe probably had the best record, but when you think about it, I mean, you know, he beat a lot of the contenders, and I suppose you throw Roy Jones Jr. and Bernard Hopkins in there, but both well past the peak. I'm not sure. Look, if I've got to go for one, I'm probably going for Lennox Lewis. For what he did, I know that will probably raise the ire of a lot of people out there saying, well, hang on, he was born in Jamaica and he fought for Canada at the Olympics. What is he? And I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, look, it probably is the argument that we have here in Australia about Costa Zoo, isn't it? Is he Australian or not? And I keep saying no, but I suppose with the same criteria, it'd be Lennox Lewis, but I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many very, very good fighters. And the thing is, though, I suppose if you look at the Australian top 10, there's the argument, you know, whether you take Costa out of or not. It comes down to probably two fighters, maybe three, but mainly two. It's either Jeff Fenech or Lionel Rose. This is for the pure Aussie born and bred fighters. It's Fenech or Lionel Rose, maybe a Johnny Famechon thrown in there as well. But it's pretty clear cut that those two or three are it. In England, there seems to be, like all the top 10 lists I checked, they all varied in different ways, all over the place. So there's not really a definitive, all right, well, on all the lists, say Lennox Lewis is in the top 2 of every single list, because he's not. Some of them he's not even in the top 10. Others he's 8, some are 3, some are 9. I mean, it's really all over the place. Joe Calzaghe, even I saw a list where he wasn't in the top 10. So I don't know, if you're an English fan out there, tell me your top 10, because it's very, very hard. I'm just going to go by what I think. That list I read out is probably the list for me. I'll quickly just read it out again. and in no particular order, by the way. I think it's one of those ones that's very, very hard. And I think I've lost it, so don't worry about that. I won't read it out again. But if you're an English fan, as I said, or even if you're just a boxing fan in general and you know you're English boxing, let me know, because as always, it's polarised everybody. Now, another list I'm going to do, not today because we've run out of time here, but I'm just sort of almost home. But what I'm going to do is a list of the Australian top 10 again, the pound for pound list. This is all-time list. But I'm going to do it a little bit with a little bit of a twist, because I know I've probably done this a couple of times on these videos about who I think are the best Aussies of all time, but there's a difference between what people regard as, or the criteria for being the best of all time, and there's a difference between that and who is actually the best fighter. So what I mean by that, I'll probably just confuse you there, but who is the top 10 as far as achievements goes, because this is what a lot of people base their top 10 on, and as they should, the ones that have achieved the most compared to the actual best boxers of all time. This is another argument that comes in. Is it what you've achieved, or is it who is actually the best boxer of all time? Because I would think, I haven't even done the list yet, but I would think someone like a Robbie Peden is one of our best ever actual fighters, but he's not in anyone's pound for pound top 10 of all time, because he didn't achieve what others did. So someone like a Lester Ellis as well, brilliant fighter, but has nowhere near the resume of some of the greats like Jeff Fennick. But was he in fact a better fighter than Jeff, toe to toe? This is where I'm sort of getting at, and that's what I'm sort of saying. There's a big difference between who achieved the most and who was actually the best fighter. So I'm going to get away from the achievements and just go for, in my opinion, the 10 best fighters we've produced, not necessarily the 10 fighters that achieved the most, if that makes sense. So I'm going to have a look at that today. If I get a chance, I'm sure I will tonight when I get home from the grand final festivities, and I'll try and do that tomorrow unless something else comes up as well. So guys, that's going to do it for today. As always, give me your thoughts, and have a great day if you're watching the grand final. Great to see the Melbourne Storm win last night too, by the way. They're in the grand final next week. I did actually watch a little bit last night, which is not like me, so go the mighty Storm. All right, guys, so as I said, have a great day. We'll catch you tomorrow.